Take their feet off our necks.
Barely 5 feet tall, but a liberal giant. Only the second female justice named on the Supreme Court, serving there for more than a quarter century. Her path to the highest court in the land was not easy. As one of the few women at Harvard Law School, she faced discrimination after graduating from Columbia in the 50s. Her tenaciousness in the classroom highlighted in the Oscar-nominated documentary on Ginsburg titled RBG, produced by journalist Julie Cohen and Betsy West.
She was one of 9 women in a class of 500. She was tied for first in her class. And the big New York City law firms just weren't hiring women.
Not a law firm in the entire city of New York bid for my employment.
Charging forward, she became a beloved law professor at Rutgers and worked as a lawyer for the ACLU. She mapped out a legal strategy to file lawsuits against gender bias in employment, housing, and government benefits.
Men and women are persons of equal dignity, and they should count equally before the law.
You won't settle for putting Susan B. Anthony on the new dollar.
When they would say things like this, how did you respond?
Well, never in anger, as my mother told me. That would have been self-defeating. Always as an opportunity to teach. I did see myself as kind of a kindergarten teacher in those days because the judges didn't think sex discrimination existed. Well, one of the things I tried to plant in their minds was think about how you would like the world to be for your daughters and granddaughters.
She won 5 landmark cases, which she argued on behalf of women in front of an all-male bench long before she sat on it. Ginsburg went on to serve as an appeals court judge in the nation's capital until that life-changing nomination by President Bill Clinton in 1993.
I am proud to nominate for Associate Justice of the Supreme Court Judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
That announcement may never have happened had it not been for the intense lobbying effort by a staunch feminist, her husband, Marty Ginsburg.
He really felt she was brilliant and she deserved it and it would be good for the country.
And at her confirmation hearing, chaired by then-Senator Joe Biden, the nominee did not shy away from her feminism, spotlighting contentious topics like abortion rights.
This is something central to a woman's life, to her dignity. It's a decision that she must make.
The Senate confirmed her in a sweeping 96-3 vote. She began quickly making her mark on historic cases. She's perhaps best known for a decision in 1996 that struck down a male-only admissions policy at the Virginia Military Institute, opening the door for women to study there.
It's Justice Ginsburg writing an opinion that builds on the foundations that lawyer Ruth Bader Ginsburg essentially helped to lay.
I know that there were some people who did not react well to the change, and my response to this was, wait and see. You will be proud of the women who become graduates of VMI.
And in a landmark case on employment discrimination in 2007, Ginsburg wrote a powerful dissent that prompted Congress to amend the laws. Named for the woman who filed the claim, the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act became one of the first pieces of legislation signed into law by President Barack Obama. While on the Supreme Court, Justice Ginsburg was a consistently liberal voice on issues like abortion, voting rights, and the separation of church and state. Off the bench, she was the first Supreme Court justice to perform a same-sex marriage ceremony. Her tenure was not without controversy, breaking tradition for a justice when Ginsburg spoke out against then-candidate Donald Trump, including to the New York Times, calling him a, quote, faker, saying, "I can't imagine what the country would be with Donald Trump as our president." Ginsburg later adding that her comments were, quote, ill-advised, and that she regretted making them. But throughout it all, Justice Ginsburg won the respect of many conservatives with her grasp of the law and her carefully crafted opinion. And as the court shifted to the right, her scathing dissents elevated her to a pop culture icon, inspiring legions of young fans and feminists to emulate her famous outspokenness
25, 24, 23.
and her fitness routines, earning her the hip-hop inspired nickname Notorious RBG.
Many varieties.
Her fame burnished by her fashion statements, her distinctive collars becoming her calling card.
And this is what I use for announcing majority opinion. This one is for dissenting opinion.
Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg helped focus our country on its most basic values of justice and equality, leaving a legacy of majority opinions and powerful dissents for generations to come.
Our thanks to Juju Chang. Joining us now by phone is ABC News chief anchor George Stephanopoulos. George, this is earth-shaking news.
As earth-shaking as it gets, Byron, 8, 9, 10 on the Richter scale. First of all, let's acknowledge Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a giant in American life. She paved the way for women's rights throughout our legal system as a lawyer, as a private lawyer, as a justice on the Supreme Court. She did as much for women's rights as Thurgood Marshall did for Black Americans as a private lawyer and on the Supreme Court. Her contributions are incalculable. And for her death to come less than 7 weeks before an election where the balance of the court is at stake is just mind-boggling.
George, do you think, in talking about the election and her passing, how dramatically do you think this will change the dynamic of the election coming up?
There's so many open questions, Byron. Number one, remember, will President Trump, we know he's going to nominate someone close to immediately. He has a list ready. He has a majority in the Senate, a Republican majority in the Senate right now. Will he be able to force through a replacement for Ruth Bader Ginsburg in the less than 7 weeks that remain until Election Day and the lame duck session that comes after that? It's an open question. Remember what happened when Justice Scalia died at the end of President Obama's term. Mitch McConnell, the Senate Republican leader, said, we're not going to approve, we're not going to give hearings to any replacement that President Obama appoints in an election year. He has now gone back on that rule, saying, well, that's different because we have a president Republican of the same party. It's unclear at this point whether Democrats will have the votes to block any appointment that the president would make in these final 7 weeks. But this will become an immediate issue in the election. It's an open question on whether or not President Trump will be able to replace Justice Ginsburg, but it will become immediately the central issue in this election.
And George, a final question: your fondest memory of the justice?
Well, I actually was in the White House when President Clinton appointed her back in 1994, 1993, and it was, she had such presence, had such history, and she had such strength that she carried throughout her life. It's hard to summarize in one word or one sentence her contributions to American life. But she made her mark on the law, she made her mark on the culture, she made her mark on politics, and she will be remembered for a long time.
Amen. ABC News chief anchor George Stephanopoulos. George, thank you so much. We're talking now via phone to ABC News chief White House correspondent Jonathan Karl. Jonathan, what's been the reaction, if any, to this point at the White House?
Byron, nothing yet, but let me tell you, I think that George hit the nail on the head here about the fact that this now suddenly becomes, if not the central, certainly a central issue in this campaign. 46 days left. Donald Trump, we don't have any official word on this, but I fully anticipate he will attempt to fill that seat on the Supreme Court. It's hard for me to see that there is enough time to get a justice confirmed, to go through confirmation hearings and to get a final vote in the Senate. But they will try, I believe, and this will be something that will be all-consuming in this campaign. She was obviously more than just a Supreme Court justice. She was an American icon. She was also the liberal heart of the Supreme Court. I mean, the Supreme Court, as you know, Byron, so well, is evenly divided. It's a conservative majority right now, a 5-4 majority, but that fifth vote is Justice Roberts, who sometimes joins with the liberals, and the idea of Donald Trump replacing the liberal core of the court with another justice like Kavanaugh or Gorsuch would tilt the court decisively, perhaps for a generation, to the right. And this is something that Democrats will fight with everything they have over the next 46 days.
John, we've known for a while now that she's had some serious health challenges, but was there any indication in and around the White House that this was imminent?
The White House did not have any visibility, as far as I can tell, into accurately what the extent of her health issue was. But obviously, they knew that it was serious. And as you saw, that just recently, the president listed his potential Supreme Court nominees for future picks. Now, this is something he did in the last campaign, and this was something he was, this is part of his campaign, his message to the right. If I am reelected, I will promise you that I will pick my Supreme Court nominees if I get any from this list. So, look, they've been prepared for this eventuality, but I don't think that they had any more knowledge into her health condition than you or I did.
John, a final question. Do we expect to hear from President Trump or get any kind of word from the White House tonight?
I've got nothing on that right now, Byron. I've been on the phone with you here for a little bit, so it's possible that that there is word out there. But I expected that the president, as you know, the president watches the news more closely than most people that work in the news, and I'm sure he will have a response. I'm sure that there will be a response that is first a tribute to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and then very quickly after that a question about next steps. But the first step I would fully anticipate from the president will be a tribute to the death of an American, to an American icon who has just died.
Jonathan Karl, ABC's chief White House correspondent. Thank you so much, my friend. We're going to be joined now on the phone with Mary Bruce, our chief congressional correspondent. Mary Bruce, what's been the reaction on the Hill?
Well, we are still, of course, keeping a close eye to see how Congress reacts. But, of course, everyone wondering, what are Republicans going to do next? The Republican leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, has made very clear that he will try to fill this seat, even though we are now under 50 days to an election. Timing here is going to be critical. They don't have a lot of time, just until transition in early January, to try and fill this seat. But Leader McConnell has made very clear that is his intention, even though, of course, it is the opposite of an argument that he made when there was the fight over trying to appoint Merrick Garland to fill this seat by Justice Scalia. In 2016, at the time, Mitch McConnell, of course, said that it would be up to voters to make that decision. But now he says this is a very different situation. He says it is a completely different game, essentially, because he says currently, of course, Republicans are in control of the Senate and of the White House. He says that changes the calculus. Democrats, though, say that is simply splitting hairs. They are going to try and delay this. And, of course, remember, because of the rules currently, Republicans they have the vote to fill this seat. But, of course, Democrats have the ability to try and delay and delay and delay. And I suspect that you will certainly see that. Trying to fill this seat, of course, is a potentially risky move for Trump and for Republicans. A lot of eyes now are on moderate Republicans, a handful of critical moderate Republicans, several incumbents who are in tight races. Could they potentially be swayed to try and oppose a rush to fill this seat? It, of course, just takes 4 votes to flip this, to try and block whoever the president puts forward. I think right now the Hill, much like the White House, as John Karl says, is simply trying to absorb this news, this tragic loss for the country. But of course, everyone, given the timing of this now completely changes the calculus as we head into this election, and all eyes now on Senate Republicans and their next move.
Mary, some news is just coming into us. ABC News has confirmed from several sources close to President Trump that he will put forward in the next few days the name of his nominee.
That does not surprise me. Of course, we know that the president is eager to try and fill this seat, maintain the balance, or change the balance on the court, of course. This is, as we mentioned, a lengthy process. There is time to try and fill this seat, but this is not something that happens instantaneously. There, of course, you have hearings, you have a nominating fight, you have plenty of time, of course, for whomever is put forward to go through a certain vetting process. But Republicans, I suspect, are going to try and do their hardest to push through whomever the president may name.
Mary, a final question. Any sense of what kind of nominee, certainly we know it'll be a conservative, what kind of nominee we expect the president will put forward?
Well, he has, floated some names, but certainly, everyone is wondering exactly who this will be. We do know, of course, that it will be a very conservative justice. I suspect the president very interested in trying to change the balance, but it is just such a monumental decision, and he will have to pick someone who is not too controversial, someone, of course, who can potentially be confirmed in now what is a very short amount of time. And certainly we have seen his previous nominees face an intense scrutiny. Justice Kavanaugh's confirmation hearing it was something that I think was certainly not the way that the president and many expected it to go down. So if the president wants to do this quickly, it is going to have to be someone that Republicans can unite around, especially getting the support of vulnerable Republicans who are in difficult political positions right now.
Mary Bruce, ABC's chief congressional correspondent, thank you so much. Joining us now via phone is Kate Shaw, longtime Supreme Court correspondent. Kate, your reaction to this news, and what are you hearing from your sources at the Supreme Court?
Well, I share the sense that George and others have voiced that this is just a huge upheaval in American law, in American life, that she was a giant. And so I think we are all still absorbing the news, although, of course, everyone knew that she was sick and was undergoing treatment for cancer. She did appear in public as recently as a week and a half ago. So she did appear to be, in decent health. So I think that this did take many by surprise. I mean, one thing I think we should say is that there are a lot of questions so Roe versus Wade is something that no one has mentioned yet, and that is a decision that very much is hanging by a thread. There's an evenly divided Supreme Court with 4 staunch conservatives. There were until today 4 liberals. Chief Justice Roberts, as the new swing, he cast a vote with the liberal justices just a few months ago to preserve the right to an abortion announced in Roe versus Wade in 1973, but only, again, by the narrowest of margins. And I think there is no question that if President Trump is successful in getting a replacement confirmed, Roe versus Wade will be overturned in the very near future. And in fact, that is what President Trump promised himself, on the campaign trail in 2016 and even before that. So I think that is very much what is at stake in this decision, in this sort of confirmation battle. I mean, one other thing I'll say is that if the White House moves quickly to put a name forward, and it sounds as though they will, I presume they will choose someone who has been confirmed to a federal appeals court relatively recently and thus has been vetted. And so there is a degree of certainty that the process could be smooth. But as we saw with Brett Kavanaugh, sometimes the unexpected does occur in a confirmation process. And of course, Christine Blasey Ford's coming forward nearly derailed his confirmation process. So there's a degree of uncertainty. Even if the White House wants to move as quickly as it can, there's only so much that is within its control.
We'll certainly have plenty to talk about the net front for the days and weeks to come. But about Justice Ginsburg, we know how her fans felt about her. How about her peers in the Supreme Court?
Well, she was fierce. I would say her colleagues on the court, the lawyers who argued before her, knew that when you were discussing anything with Justice Ginsburg, you had to bring your A game because she was the most prepared, the most well-read, the most precise in her thinking and her analysis. She had very high standards for everyone around her, very high standards for herself. But I think because she imposed those same kinds of standards on herself, she was beloved and respected by virtually everyone who came into contact with her. I mean, she was famously close with Justice Antonin Scalia, who of course died in 2016. Though they disagreed on just about everything in American law, there was a degree of mutual respect and affection because they were both just, such craftsmen and such. They were both at sort of the top of their respective games, and they had a warm personal relationship. I'm not sure she was as close to all of her colleagues on the court as that, but I think they all had a great deal of respect for her. And, just the American legal profession in general, she sort of was in a category of her own, even before in the last few years she became this kind of icon in the wider culture, particularly to young people, right, who really embraced the notorious RBG.
Kate Shaw, thank you so very much. For a final word, we're going to go back to ABC's chief anchor, George Stephanopoulos. George, for your final thoughts on this incredibly sad evening for our nation.
Batten down the hatches, Byron. This is something we've never seen before. We are now less than 7 weeks from a presidential election. A Supreme Court justice has died, a Supreme Court justice whose death opens up the possibility of changing the balance on the Supreme Court, as Kate Shaw and John Karl said, for a generation. I would say in the coming days and weeks, keep your eye not only on President Trump, not only on former Vice President Joe Biden, but on several key senators. Look at Susan Collins of Maine, Joni Ernst of Iowa, Cory Gardner of Colorado, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Tom Tillis of North Carolina, even Lindsey Graham, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee from South Carolina. The decisions those senators make in these coming days and weeks will determine the course of the Supreme Court, perhaps the course of the country, for another generation.
Indeed. George Stephanopoulos. George, thank you so much. I know you have much more on Good Morning America in the morning. Thank you very much. Later, we'll have a comprehensive look at her life and legacy and online at abcnews.com. Again, Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has died this evening at the age of 87. We'll have more developments throughout this evening. Thanks so much for watching.
This has been a special report from ABC News.